because I'm in this single season of my life, I can spend more time with my extended family. So, I can make my little cousin's youth basketball games, right? I can go to my great aunt's birthday party. I can volunteer in my community, right? So I can extend love to all of these other branches of people in my life and in society who benefit from my presence, right? And who I also gain a lot from being in community with them. So I think, when we tend to compare ourselves and our journeys to others, it can steal a lot of that joy, and take away a lot of the happiness and excitement that we can get around the current state that we're in or season that we're in.
This is a Lirae Journey podcast on the McKissick Health Podcast Network. I'm Dr. Sherella Cupid, your host.
The Lirae Journey podcast is a space for Black women to choose themselves. For season 3, the theme is Love and. We'll continue the Sister Circle conversations with Black women from different stages of life within various roles regarding personal, community, and professional. The intention of the season is to continue and start conversations on the meanings, experiences, and practices around love in numerous areas. This is our grounding season. Because Lirae means love is real and eternal. So sis, let's practice love. Today, I'm really excited to be in conversation with Dr. Teairra Evans. We've been sisters now it will be going on 2 years pretty soon. Time goes on. Yeah. It goes really quickly in thinking about time, right? So we were introduced or connected by one of our good sis, Dr. Asha Winfield. So appreciate just having community where sisters connect me with other great sisters, right? So was really appreciative for the relationship that Teairra and I have formed and shall continue to form in different areas of our life, in particular research. So Dr. Teairra Evans, if you can give us an overview of yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sherella. I'm so happy to be here chatting with you today. So for the people, I am a cognitive psychologist by training, and I study decision making across the lifespan. So one thing that interests me about this conversation around love are the choices that we make, right? So, and how they impact not only us as individuals, but our communities as well. So I was born in Alabama. I'm a Southern girl through and through. I love living in the South. Don't put me anywhere else, but I'm a Southern girl. As I said, I love college football, Roll Tide, and I love spending time with my family. When I have some free time, when I'm not teaching or in the lab. So.
Thank you, Teairra. So in thinking about the importance of this conversation, can you share what brings you to the Sister Circle space?
Yeah, I think what brings me to this space is kind of demystifying the work-life balance of the academy, right? And how you can navigate in dating. So I'm sure it'll come up at some point in the discussion. But I'm a single Black woman living in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I'm on the tenure track within, the ivory tower. And so what that work-life balance kind of looks like as you navigate as a single woman who is interested in, finding a long-term partner is something that I think people don't chat about much because the job can be so demanding that it almost falls to the back burner for many people.
Thank you. So the fact that you have uplifted your position right now in life, right? You're a Black woman, you're single, you're a researcher, you're interested in a long-term partner. If you could name this season of your life, what title would you give it?
Yeah, I would call it hustle season, right? So I'm trying to get after it in so many aspects of my life, right? When it comes to, we're discussing love and career, right? So when it comes to career, trying to, get my lab off of the ground, get my research agenda going in a positive direction, but also being intentional about putting myself in spaces, right, where I can meet potential partners and carving out time for that, right? So that's also a hustle and a balance that goes to it as well, because I think it's so easy for us to find comfort in staying at home. So I can be a bit of a homebody, but he is not going to find me on the couch. I mean, unless I'm on Hinge or, all of the data apps. But yeah, I would say hustle season is what it is.
Okay, so I'm thinking about the season being titled Your Hustle Season. How are you defining love?
I have traditionally defined love using um, really the foundation that the Bible gives us in First Corinthians. So love is patient, love is kind. As I was thinking more about my personal definition of love, I would also add that it's intentional, right? So it includes these choices that we're making. So people often say we fell in love, right? Like it just happened. We fell in love. I would venture to say that there were many choices that were made, right, that led to this feeling that, oh, it was, just an overnight type of thing where you fell in love and you're in love. But there were several choices made, right, whether it was the initial few dates, the time spent, the investment made, right, that now has you in this more committed space or thinking about it. So yeah, I would say, adding in that intentional piece there.
Being intentional about practicing the care of the patients.
Mm-hmm.
So, in thinking about intentionality, you're the second sister to bring up the fact that love has to be intentional, like there are intentional acts of kindness, is what Renee said. Are you unlearning anything concerning love and career?
Yeah, I am unlearning this idea that you can't have it all, right? So I think for so long, it has probably been pushed as a narrative where you see in television and film that if there's this hyper super successful woman, right, oftentimes she does not have a partner or she doesn't have the partner in which would serve her the best. In a relationship, perhaps she is not fulfilled there. So I'm unlearning some of those ideals that have been shown and perhaps I've taken on, and that at some point you'll have to settle. Perhaps, that can be settling across a wide range, right, of things. But this idea that you can't have it all.
That's good. So, in thinking about the idea of having it all and the fact that you have unlearned that, are you redefining like what does it mean for Teairra to have it all? Like, what is your all?
Yeah, I think that redefining what does it mean for Teairra to have it all. I think one, I've had to spend time with myself and probably conduct a bit of a self audit, right? About partners that I was pursuing versus partners that I really need it, right? So I feel like as a woman, I have gone through different stages in my life where it's like, okay, I'm just having fun. I'm just having fun. This isn't serious. To now shifting to a more serious mindset, which probably comes as I grow older, right? At some point, and have these thoughts about long-term partnership. Having it all has kind of shifted in what would be best for me as a partner. So whether that is someone who is able to understand my career, right, very well and what that entails, a man that is, self-assured, has a strong sense of self, right, is often very difficult when you're an educated Black woman. I feel like sometimes there can be a bit of push and pull when it comes to a power dynamic in relationships there. So really just honing in on, I would prioritize in a partner, I guess.
And that's connected to the next question, right? So, in thinking about honing in, reprioritizing what you want in a partner, and considering love and long-term partnership, what are you learning about love and career?
Um, what am I learning about love and career? I believe that I am learning that there are people who have all of the qualities, right, that you're looking for in a mate. And I am also learning that, your career doesn't have to be um, this major part of your identity. I think, especially for people in our career fields, it takes up a huge chunk of time, which then, you know, encompasses a large amount of your or piece of your identity, right? But that doesn't have to be the case. So I have, as I've said before, I'm a Southern girl. I enjoy sports, like all of these other things that can be used as, a function to find like compatibility and similar interest. And it doesn't just have to boil down to someone understanding or valuing my career at this time.
That's good. That's good. I think that in being in higher education, I am not on a tenure track, right? So some of the experiences that you will have, I have not experienced, and I may not experience that. But I do know in regards to like what does it mean to be a researcher and produce these publications, right? Like what does it mean to have this research agenda? And I would agree, this societally, in our society, in the US society, we do put a lot of emphasis on like, oh, what do you do? Like that's generally one of the first questions that we ask someone, right? Whether or not we're interested in them as a romantic partner, we're interested in like being friends or just like general conversation. That tends to be like one of the top three questions that we ask. Like, oh, what do you do? Right. So, in thinking about what you said, like, oh, perhaps my partner will not understand my career, like, what does that mean for you in regards to how you said, like, you're reconsidering, like, what is major, right? You're from the South, you like sports, for example, right? So, how are you rethinking that in regards to prioritizing career? But, like, where is it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think this would fall to backtrack some, it would probably fall more so under what I'm unlearning. So I think for a significant amount of time, I approach dating as, my partner doesn't have to have a similar level of education or understanding regarding my career. And that has not always worked out so well for me personally. And so now I think I'm shifting a bit to, okay, there has to be some level of understanding there, because if there's not, I feel like I am just tired, right? So I have to explain, several different facets, because one, it's not just, to your point with speaking about the tenure track, it's not just like we have classes to teach, right? I'm running a research lab. I have publications. I'm serving on committees. I have service obligations. And so explaining the complete picture and hoping that someone can understand that and continue to, be able to shift and pick up when I'm talking about different things and explaining different things has been exhausting at times for me. So now I believe that I've kind of shifted to like, okay, they have to at least be able to understand like the research process, right? Or that my job encompasses both teaching and research. And when I'm not teaching, right, I'm not just off. It's not like I don't have anything else to do. But having to explain that over and over, and really a lot of the intricacies of it, has been exhausting for me.
That's
So,
interesting. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Because for me, I know now I'm intentional in this season about, in regards to like my professional titles, they are important, right? Like I'm a researcher. I love doing research. I can see that as being one of my lifelong career roles, right? Or titles, pardon. But in thinking about relationship, for examples, like when I was earning my PhD, my brother earned his PhD, but his PhD process was different than mine. He has his PhD in engineering, right? So some stuff I had to do, he didn't have to do, and some stuff he had to do, right? So I'm just like, oh, okay, that's really different, right? But for my immediate family, they weren't in the PhD process, so they couldn't understand that process, right? So at a certain point, like I wasn't concerned about them understanding the process so much as, can you understand if I can't make it to this family function because I got to finish these comprehensive exams, right? Like perhaps can you like get dinner for me or make dinner for me because I'm exhausted because I've been in the lab for these amount of hours, right? So I think for me now, and thinking about my intimate relationships, whether or not that's a romantic partnership or my family relationships, I don't need them to understand, because I too don't understand some of their professions. Like I don't know what it means to be an engineer. I don't know what it means to be a project manager. I don't know what it means to be a nurse, right? Because it's not my lived experience, and I don't intend on living that experience. But for me, it's kind of like, okay, like how do you need me to show up for you? And perhaps that means like, oh, can you pick up my kids today, right? Can you give me a ride to this place? Like, can you have dinner? Like, can you get dinner for me, right? So I think for me now, understanding for me looks like, can you support me in ways that just helps me to function because I'm doing this stuff. So that's how I look at it now in regards to like folks not understanding, because I came to the understand like I'm not gonna understand your career because I don't live that career. But what I need you to understand is perhaps can you cook dinner? Like that's important.
Yeah. I think that was very well said, because I feel like we are similar in that regards, but perhaps I explained it a bit differently, and had a different choice of words. But that's definitely right, the way that I feel it, because a lot of the intellectual labor, right, that we perform is, it's almost just, well, you just sit at the computer all day, or you're just reading all day, and why can't you do this, why can't you do that? And yeah, to your point, having your family, your partner like value that work and be understanding in it is important. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Okay. Sounds good. I appreciate that we're at the space where we're looking expansively, like what do we need for folks to love us?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like perhaps you need that partner who's going to say roll tide, right? Who's going to go to those football games with you, right? Like you need a partner who loves sports because that's something that you love. So it's kind of like, okay, what we doing on Sunday? We watching football. Like that's how we do love because that's what you need, right? So I think it's beautiful that like you have a vision in regards to like what is needed for yourself for someone to love you wholly. I think that's beautiful. And then thinking about what's needed for you to feel love, to be loved. Do you have any advice or offerings to younger sisters concerning love and career?
Yeah, I am often one not to give advice, which is it's interesting. I guess maybe that's a reflection of the way that I take advice. I don't know. I'll work through that at another time. But advice for younger sisters regarding love and career, I would say one, be patient with yourself, right? Is you are on your own journey, whether it's solely focused on your career or solely focused on, finding a life partner. I think a lot of the times we compare our journeys to others. So, you know, she was able to, go here and she found a husband and I don't have a husband and I want to have kids and I keep on getting older. So these things, right, can really take away the joy from the current season that we're in and like really cloud and not allow us to see the positives, right, in the situation that we're in right now. So because I'm in this single season of my life, I can spend more time with my extended family. So, I can make my little cousin's youth basketball games, right? I can go to my great aunt's birthday party. I can volunteer in my community, right? So I can extend love to all of these other branches of people in my life and in society who benefit from my presence, right? And who I also gain a lot from being in community with them. So I think, when we tend to compare ourselves and our journeys to others, it can steal a lot of that joy, and take away a lot of the happiness and excitement that we can get around the current state that we're in or season that we're in.
Hmm. That's good. I appreciate that advice. I would take that advice. Yeah, to be present in
Mhm.
your season and to practice patience and to be considerate about the ways in which we're in spaces of reciprocity, concern, and love, because it is beneficial to all of those community members. I definitely will agree with that. And also, in thinking about your community, are there any questions you believe that we should be having concerning love and career with our aunties, our mamas and thems, our cousins, right? So, are there any conversations that you think perhaps we should be having with the older generation that we're not having?
Yeah, I think in particular, right, with my aunts and my mom and my cousins, there often isn't a lot of talk about relationships, right? So there is a lot of conversation about career. What's next? What are you doing? And, things all about career, about educational goals, but never so much about dating, about relationships. And I don't know if, right, it's almost a level of respect, right? So they don't want to offer up their opinions on your partners or where you are, in your journey in terms of love, right? So I think they probably see it as a benefit. Questions that I would pose to the older generation in my family would be more so about how they juggle their career and their spouses and partners, right? How they were able to be present and be successful in both arenas, I think it would be beneficial to have these conversations, and to talk more about whether they were able to be successful through building community, right? Finding other ways, or means of support in career, right? Having colleagues who they could call on, which then freed them up maybe to be present for their kids or their spouse, different things like that, and learning the ways in which they were able to navigate would be helpful, but it's often something that we don't talk about at all. So any conversation at this point would probably be beneficial. But
Yeah.
I know, right, that we don't discuss it because they don't want to be that auntie, right, that always has something to say about your partner or what you're doing or where you're at. So they're trying to, toe the line but I think just sharing their experience, it doesn't have to be an invasion of privacy on my end, right? But if they felt comfortable sharing the ways in which they've been able to navigate it, it would be helpful.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think in regards to the generational differences, I would argue like our parents' generation, they showed up and they did what they had to do because it had to get done.
Mhm.
And oftentimes like they would say like, oh, I didn't have time to reflect. Like I had these kids, I had this spouse, I had this career, like I had all of these things. Self-care for women wasn't common practice in regards to like, let me express this. Like I need this, like, oh, I need this time. I need this self-care day. I need this like mommy staycation, right? Like just from personal experience, I can say like I saw the bills getting paid. Like I saw my mother going to work, right? I saw her providing for us. I saw her reading sometimes, but not to the level at which it felt as though it was a normal practice for her to have this as as a way in which she navigated love, career, and motherhood. So now, as I am getting older, I am more intentional about asking these questions because I want to know these things. Because one day I'm going to be in that age group. And also in considering like health, for example, I think a lot of health conversations we do not have, which we need to have, because when I go to the doctor's office, for example, I want to know my family history because then it helps to inform my care, right? So even in thinking about the health conversations that we don't have, that's also something that's really important to me, not just physical health, but mental health. Like, what does it mean for you to experience motherhood? Like, what does it mean for you to experience a C-section versus a vaginal birth, right? Like all of those questions, which really impact the ways women exist. I can say for me growing up, we didn't have it, right? So in regards to being respectful about not wanting to invade the private, for me, I'm thinking now, like the home is the private. And mama, you're part of you're part of my immediate family. Like, like you're my auntie, like you're a part of the private. And I need to know that private. So that way, like I can live life more easily. Like I know these stories. So that's the way I think of it. And it's like, how do you create the space to invite the sacred in? Right. And that's a question that I have for myself now. Like as I'm getting older, like what does it mean to like, go through perimenopause? I don't know. Somebody tell me, please, right? Because I want to know when I get there, like, oh, this is potentially what I am experiencing because I have been prepared. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know if that's like some of the questions that you have, like, oh, like what does it mean for y'all to age? Can't like, but that's
Yeah.
definitely one of the questions that I have now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good, right? The way that you spoke about, I want to know. So when I get to this point, right, I'll be able to identify it, and then inviting in the sacred, um, really helps me to think about how I can help cultivate, right, that environment. the next time that I'm in a space with my mom and my aunts and my cousins, right? Where we can have a conversation around love and, other more private topics, I guess, or sacred topics. So yeah, it has my gears swirling.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And considering having those conversations, right? You mentioned that you're a daughter, you're a niece, you're a cousin, you're a researcher, right? You're a volunteer, you're all of these roles, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
in thinking about your primary roles, what is a reminder to yourself to feel grounded? Like, how do you circle back to feeling grounded?
Mm. How do I circle back to being grounded? I think what grounds me mainly in the context of relationships would probably be family. So, yeah, I wear all of these different hats, but to me, the most important one that I wear is like a family member. And my family, I mean, we are extremely close, although I guess we don't talk about some things, right? They would all describe everybody would say that we're, fairly close. We spend a lot of time together and we enjoy each other's company. And so, what grounds me is the support of my family. So, recently in the media, we've seen, several stories about faculty members on campus, and particularly, Black women faculty members and harm that's been done to them, and, consequences that have come as, a result of some of that harm. And my family reached out to me to let me know that, hey, listen, you got a family, okay? So if it gets too much, you have a family, and do not forget that. Like, you have support, right? So they keep me grounded and knowing that we are here. If anything becomes too much, like, we are one call away. So really, my family and my upbringing, the place that I was raised in Alabama for about the first 14 years of my life. I spent in rural Alabama off a dirt road. And so I really find a lot of peace in being outside in nature. And so if I ever get too stressed, right, I'm just like, I just need to go outside and I need to walk around and I need to feel some wind, right? I need to look at some trees. I need to feel the grass, and I will be okay. So yeah, I would say family and nature help keep me grounded.
That's beautiful. I'm glad that your family was intentional, like you said, in regards like how did we define love, practicing that intentionality to reach out to you and be like, now, sis, you let us know, okay? Because I think that some conversations that we are having is in regards to Black women unlearning, like, what does it mean to be a superwoman,
Mm-hmm.
right? And this the masking that some Black women do because they have been socialized to do it all or to do it at the extreme or to always have to be perfect, which does have negative consequences on our mental health. And you're in a field that's really like competitive. It does take a lot of intellectual bandwidth, right? So I'm glad that you have a family that says like, hey, we are always here, okay? So I'm glad that you know that. And also that they reminded you of that when they saw it, right? Because we always say like check in on your strong friends, but also just check in on people that you love,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm really glad that they circled back and checked in on you, to be quite frank. So in thinking about defining love, practicing love, how do you know if someone loves you?
I would say through intentional acts. That is how I know. So if, for instance, you see what's going on in the media, you call me, hey, are you okay? Can I do anything for you that would bring you joy right in this season? It can go so far as, smaller acts. My sister will order my coffee and she'll be like, your pickup order. So just, little things like that. My aunt will send me cards in the mail, or when I see her, she'll have small little tokens like, I thought you would like this, right? So just intentional acts, small or large. I think when I think more about love and career and being in community with, you know, women such as yourself and like Dr. Winfield, and how you all have been so intentional in like supporting me through, transition into my new role, right? So providing a space for me to talk about research ideas and like bring me in on projects, right? So that's a certain level of care because you both are, busy, you both have things going on, but you said, I'm going to be intentional in bringing in this fellow sister, Doc, right? And helping her get started on her journey, right? So I'm sure that we all benefit from having these more intellectual conversations, but there was also an intentional act, right? That was rooted in kindness, rooted in care, and rooted in wanting to see another individual grow and develop in a positive way.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that affirmation. So, when do you feel like you're loving yourself the most? Right? I've asked sisters to use their senses. Like, what does it look like, sound like, feel like, right? How do you know
Um,
you're loving yourself the most?
yeah, I feel like I know when I'm loving myself the most when I feel free. So sometimes I can feel very stressed and tense, right? Our body holds on to it. But when I feel free and I feel this, when I'm walking, when I'm having conversations, just my tone, the way that I'm able to speak at times. It's like, okay, I'm feeling all right. I'm relaxed. I'm in a safe space, or I'm, loving on myself in an intentional way. I will also say, um, I can tell also by my different regimens and habits. Um, so when it comes to being able to get in a workout session or make it to a yoga class, right? That helps me a lot. And so I can tell when my schedule is more hectic, right? And I've skipped a few classes, and I always say, well, I can't go to this class because I have all of these other things going on. But it never ends up the way that I want it to end up. It's like the cost benefit analysis never aligns with my thoughts. It's like I should have just went to the class, honestly. Um, but yeah, I would say it's also reflected in, the way that I show up in terms of exercising and, taking care of myself and, more nutritional aspects as well.
That's good. Do you tend to have your classes in the morning, at the end of the day? Like, what serves you the best in thinking about exercise and exercise classes?
Yeah, so in the past, I preferred to work out in the morning. So my exercise schedule regimen has really shifted. So I used to be a 5 a.m. gym girly. And really that was probably the most productive that I ever was in my life. Maybe I need to get back to it. But yeah, I was a 5 a.m. gym girly at one point. And then that kind of shifted during my grad school program because I had like actual academic classes in the afternoon, late afternoon, so I could push back my wake up time, which then resulted in me going to the gym later. And now I work out in the evening, which is a complete shift from anything that I've ever done in the past. But what I found in this season with working out in the evening is that I can let go of all of the stress of the day. So it's really this unwinding time for me because by the time I leave the gym, my car ride home, I have my tunes. I can get home, put my Clio Soul on, get in the shower, and it just sets me up, right, to get in this relaxation state, right, and to be able to be present at home and not bring that stress from the work day back into my personal space with me.
Right. That's beautiful because if I'm not mistaken, you do all of your work on campus, right? Is it you still? Yes.
Yeah, mainly. So I think I'm kind of weird in that way that I prefer to work on campus. I do like to compartmentalize things. So I think that's just a function of that. So I prefer, and I'm also more productive in my office space on campus. So the only things that I really do from home regarding work are like Zoom meetings, things of that, but no writing, no grading for the most part, and I take few Zoom meetings. It might be like one or two a week from home. But I really do prefer to leave my, personal home space as that. I want my mind to know when I walk through the door, this is no work. And also, Sherella, I have started to turn off my email notifications on my phone now. Yes, yes, yes. I thought you would be proud. So I have
Yes.
started to do that, and my mental health has benefited greatly.
I think that's good, sis. I think that's great. The way I see it is, God forbid, if there's something that's urgent or an emergency, you're not going to send me an email. You're going to call me or send me a text, right? So that's the way in regards to how you said you compartmentalize your space. That's how I compartmentalize like the need or the sense of urgency that society has put on us, like always to respond to these bings and these dings. Well, mine ain't never been on anyway. But just to not even like to create the atmosphere. So it's good that, like you said, like once you enter the threshold of your home, your entire psyche and your bodies is like, oh, we home now. It's time to rest. It's time to
Mhm.
have this unwind routine, right? So I think it's beautiful that you're mindful to say, this is my home. And this is what it means for me to feel at home versus this is work and this is what it means for me to feel at work because it's so important for us to have these strong separations and boundaries, at least for me and my personal experiences, in order to practice wellness. So
Mhm.
I think it's a great idea. I love the fact that you have an unwinding regiment. I think that's beautiful. Like I've completed my work day and now it's time to unwind. So I think that's definitely a good practice for folks to consider if they don't have some type of unwinding regiment. For me, I know that I'm doing well when I practice my morning hygiene routine and my night hygiene routine, right? So it means like for me, like you said, I wake up, also like do stretches, have a prayer, have a great breakfast, and then check things. Like not looking at social media, not looking at the news, because we know it's definitely doomsday for the majority of it. So for me, it's kind of like the mindset of, oh, let me begin with myself versus let me begin with the world. And that's what I tell myself. So same thing at night. It's like, okay, at a certain point in time, like I'm not listening to the news. I'm not taking in any information. Let me end with myself. So that way I'm like separating things. So it's good that we both compartmentalize when thinking about the ways in which we practice like self-love and show up for ourselves. So, Teairra, I appreciate the conversation and thinking about the intentionality of love. Since you study choices, right?
Mhm.
What would you say about the choice to choose to be intentional? Like, what would you say about that?
The choice to be intentional. Oh my goodness. I would say that one, you have to have a certain level of awareness, right, when it comes to making choices. So, what research shows is that some of these decisions that we make are more automatic, like unconscious decisions, right? We don't really put a lot of systematic thought or working memory resources towards those. Whereas other decisions are more conscious. We go through all of the consequences, all of the outcomes, right? So being intentional would fall under that school of thought, right? So when we make choices that are more intentional, they're going to require more effort, right? So you have to be willing to put in the effort, right, to be intentional. And I think perhaps that's what scares some people, right? So it's like I'm going to show up for them in the way that my brain is telling me, right? Or the way that's most quick, easiest for myself, right? But people will not take that step further to engage in this more systematic thought, think about it deliberately, and say, this is the way, right, that will be more intentional for me to show up in for this particular person or to show up for myself, right? So, for instance, when we think about wellness, I might say, oh, girl, you can just, pick up some Chick-fil-A on the way to campus, right? That's quick, it's easy. I'm just going to eat that versus kind of thinking through and saying, okay, well, if I take time on Sunday and I go to the grocery store and I make these meals, that's more of a like systematic, deliberate choice. Like I have to think through the grocery list, right? I got to figure out when I got time to cook the food, all of these things, right? So it requires more effort, but in the long term for myself, right? It would be that more intentional choice when it comes to wellness and like what is going to have me showing up as the best version of myself. Um, so yeah, just putting in a little more effort at times and not always, just relying on that quick, automatic, unconscious decision making.
That's good. And how do you think people become aware about that, right? Because you said that a lot of us, well, it helps us, right? Thinking about brain activity, things that are automated, so we can have energy to other choices, right? So in thinking about like how do we potentially like redirect some of that brain energy to be more intentional to have these deliberate outcomes, what would you offer? So say someone, for example, who's listening to the podcast wants to be more intentional about having an unwinding regimen. Like what would you say to them to be more cognizant to say, hey, I need to put in the effort here? Like, what advice would you offer?
I would say one, perhaps start first by doing a self audit, right? So you can look at the ways in which, so for instance, you said, you're doing well when you do your morning and your night routine, right? So that probably was something that you learned from being more intentional, like thinking through, okay, when am I showing up as my best self? What are these things, So one, that was like a mini little self audit there. So one, we have to become aware, right, of what's going to produce the most positive outcomes for ourselves. And then when we're in the moment, when you just want to say, I want to get into bed and I don't want to make my tea tonight, right? Just taking a second, thinking, taking that time. It's really time, right? So taking more time, right? To think through that decision that you're making. What are going to be the outcomes? If you don't do this night routine, how is that going to impact your day? Right. So for some of us, sometimes it's like, I need these 45 minutes of sleep and I don't have time for the tea, the water to boil, the tea to brew, all of this stuff. I need to sleep. That's going to be, a better outcome for myself in that regard. But it's really just time, just taking the time, just pause, stop, think through it is what I would say.
That's beautiful. Thank you. I appreciate those steps. So again, I appreciate you taking the time out, Dr. Teairra Evans, to be in community with me today. Definitely learn more about your practice as a cognitive psychologist. Yes? Okay. Yes. Beautiful. And also about the ways you're showing up in other areas of your life. So again, community, we appreciate y'all listening to the podcast because Lirae means love is real and eternal. So sis, let's practice love. So Teairra, 2 questions for the sign off, right? Do you have any public social media spaces? Like that could be LinkedIn, Instagram, right? You didn't put it down. I just wanted to, yeah, I don't know if I missed it on the thing too. But yeah, if you have any that you'd like to share, if not, that's okay. I asked all the guests, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. It's Teairra Evans on LinkedIn. And you can follow me on Instagram at Teairra Said What is my handle. So you can follow me on there.
Thank you, Teairra, for sharing your social media handles. The last question is, do you have any projects or services that you would like to share? So you said that right now you are working on founding your lab, right? So in regards to you being a researcher, any services, any projects that you would like the audience to know about?
Yeah, so I am the PI for the Evans Cognition Lab. And we have several projects that are ongoing currently. However, we have just finished data collection on them. So I don't have any projects in which the public could participate in right now. But if you connect with me on LinkedIn, when we do have our next project with ongoing data collection available, or any of our community engagement events, you can learn about them through my LinkedIn. There you'll see all of the needed information with date, time, location.
That's beautiful. Are you able to share what the project was about that you just finished data collection or?
Yeah. So I am interested in the ways in which the Black church influences political decision making. And so we looked at it through the credibility heuristic, so using the pastor as a credible source and endorsing a political candidate. And we looked at how older adults made political decisions as compared to younger adults, especially when the information was more difficult to comprehend. And so, what we know as cognitive researchers is that as we age, our working memory capacity becomes limited. And so at times we don't engage with information that's more difficult to understand, processes that are more difficult for us to engage in. And so, an example that I use often is when you think about technology, right? So, if you think about people close to you that are perhaps a bit older, oftentimes they will not try to engage in this process of learning around new technology, right? They'll just wait until someone comes and they can figure out what's going on with the TV or what's going on, with their smart home devices, right? They do not try to Google, let me troubleshoot, let me do any of this, right? Because they are saving their cognitive resources for activities that are more important for them. And so we looked at the decision making there within older and younger adults when information was more difficult to comprehend, and how that pastor in the Black church influenced the decision making. So hopefully we will be able to share our results in a public space soon. They were extremely interesting, and I think will provide a lot of insight on the role of the Black church within our society.
That's amazing. It's definitely timely, considering the times that we live in, right? Also, I just have questions that, how we have those future research questions, or if I was in the audience, some questions that I would have just thinking about what you mentioned, the younger versus the older generation, how societally religious participation has decreased, right?
Correct.
People who identify like with the religious group, but there's also a new wave of like what's that? In regards to like mindfulness, like more people consider themselves spiritual versus X, Y, and Z. So I'm just wondering about the intersections of that in regards to decision making and political engagement. Since I'm in the Northeast, technically it's also still the South, but the ways in which politicians use religious rhetoric as a campaign tool. So many questions. So I'm really interested in your data.
Offline.
Yeah, so interested to see what happens, and definitely if anything I can do to support getting more out to the public space, because definitely I think it's meaningful for us to be intentional about what we consider credible sources and how it influences our decisions. Because yes. Yep. Okay, like you said, we'll connect online in regards to that. So again, thank you, Teairra, for taking the time out to share your experiences, considering the concept of love and career. So as always, y'all, just a reminder that love is real and eternal. In community, peace.
Hey sis, subscribe, comment, and leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed the show. To encourage other sisters on their journey, share the show with them and tag @Lirae Journey on Facebook and Instagram. I'll see you in the chats. Listen to the Lirae Journey podcast on all platforms and follow us on social media @Lirae Journey. You can also find us online at podcast.mckissickhealth.com. That's podcast.mckissickhealth.com. So come on in.